All right, here, welcome everybody. This is Joe Vorell with the STD podcast and Gemini Joe Rickman here with the War and 20s of Wrestling. We're joined here by Mr. Brutus the Barber Beefcake. How are you today, sir?
Great, man. Let's get out of the pool, had some dinner, and sit down here and get ready to go.
Outstanding, outstanding. Now, I noticed that you were born in Tampa, Florida. Is that correct? That's what your Wikipedia article said.
That's it. That's the truth.
Outstanding. Now, when you were growing up, how was life growing up in Tampa? What was it like for you?
Life was great growing up in Tampa. You know, wrestling business, Florida Championship Wrestling back in the day was big. A lot of the New York guys all came through Florida. It was one of their favorite places to be. Superstar Billy Graham, just, you know, everybody would come down here. So we got tremendous wrestling. And as a kid, I used to go to the Armory and watch the matches. My oldest sister used to take me.
Okay.
Oh, nice. What was your favorite match at the Armory? Is there a certain match that stood out?
Wow. Okay. Back in those days, Jose Lothario, Wahoo McDaniels. You had Greg the Hammer Valentine, Johnny Valentine, Greg's father, Johnny. Wow. That man was probably one of the only guys that really scared me. His dad was scary looking. He was a big, just raw bone guy, not a weightlifter, but just extrude mean out of it. Just came out of his skin. Like, you know, I watched the other guys walking around and never thought nothing of it. But when he came out, I was like jumping back.
He kind of made him. He kind of made things believable to you, huh?
Oh no, you kidding me? The way he hit people and things, Jesus! It doesn't get any realer than that. I mean, come on.
Now, when you were growing up in Tampa, were you like athletic in high school? You were a class clown. What was your school going like? When did you know that you were going to be wrestling? Were you always know you were going to be a wrestler? How does all that?
No. I was a baseball player from the time I was very small. That was my deal. Probably had I not gone the wrestling route, I definitely would have been a professional baseball player without a doubt. I mean, at 6'3", 6'4", 230. I mean, talk about hitting the long ball, brother. I used to switch it when I was 11 years old and knock it over the Little League fence. And I was this big around and skinny as a rail. But, I had a knack. Baseball was my thing.
So you played baseball in high school then?
I played first year of high school, baseball, basketball, and football. And then I wound up quitting all of them.
What did you start wrestling while you were in high school? When did you first start professional wrestling?
No, I was after
high school. I was
about 19 years old.
You're about 19, so you were out of high school. Who first told you about wrestling? How did you even know about it? Like what spurred you to get into it?
I mean, I used to go watch wrestling. I was working out at a gym near the University of South Florida. It was called Stan's Naturite Gym, and there was a bunch of power lifters, some real crazy MFs there, buddy. And I mean crazy, strong boys. And Terry Bollea used to work out there too. And so we crossed paths, all the time. A lot of times we used to ride to the gym together because we lived 8 blocks apart. And so, I mean, it wasn't like I was thinking about being a wrestler. I was just started getting some weight training, get some weight on me because I was so doggone skinny. I got out of high school. I was only weighed about $165. And, he was looking at getting in the wrestling business. And, he's about 3 or 4 years old, 4 years older than me. And he was running around with his friends and doing his thing. And it didn't work out for me. He went down and tried to break in, and they broke his leg the first day. So he quit.
We heard that story. Hiro Matsuda broke his leg, I believe.
So then I guess when he tried to make a comeback, he asked me to go and train in Cocoa Beach for a while and try to break in the wrestling business. And I said, you know what the heck? You know, I was working a dead end job for $5 an hour, going to Hillsborough Community College, taking a couple courses, and I thought, hey, you know what the heck, let's, give it a try.
Yeah. So who are some of your trainers then? Did Terry train you a lot, and who's some of the other guys that trained you back then?
Well, guys like Ron Fuller, the Tennessee stud, Bullet Bob Armstrong, Ox Baker. That's funny. Ox Baker training me. No, but just, guys like Professor Toro Tanaka is one of the guys that I, was a mentor to me when I was younger. Wahoo, Jose Lothario, Rocky Johnson, Sputnik Monroe. There was just so many guys in the Florida area. Our first territory was the Pensacola territory. That's where Bob Armstrong and Ron Fuller, Robert Fuller, two guys like that. Bunch of real good people. And I learned in the ring. They showed me a few things and how to lock up, how to hit the ropes. I know how I took judo and different stuff, so I knew how to fall and hit the mat. Hit the mat flat. You don't want to land on your side and stuff. I learned in the ring having matches. I went in the ring and had my first match was a tag match against Ox Baker and Eric the Red.
Eric the Red. Are either of those guys still around now? When was the last time you heard of Eric the Red?
And then my partner, a guy named Ron Slinker. I think all three of the guys at my first match they're all deceased.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. I mean, out of those four, it was you and Ox Baker I've heard of.
Yeah, well, Ox was a good friend of mine for many, many years, for 40-something years, 40 years or whatever, until he died.
Oh, well, rest in peace, Ox. Well, how long were you, did you stay down in the independents before you started going to the WWF back then? Like how long? I read that Wikipedia, it said like up until 84. When were you first approached, and who came to you with the idea to go there? How did that work back then?
It wasn't exactly anybody approached me. I did territories, pretty much every territory in the country, for probably 6 years, from late 76, early 77 until 1983, I think. And I'd made a run through New York, and I'd been everywhere, all the territories, except for Dallas. I didn't do the Von Erich territory, but Hogan had just gone to New York and took the belt from the Sheik. The cable TV thing had just taken over the whole country, and now WWF was born. It was the WWF when Vince's father owned it.
Right.
And he dropped one of the W's and stole the World Wildlife Foundation's initials, and then took him 30 years in court before. That's why he had to change to World Wrestling Entertainment, because the World Wildlife Foundation, the WWF, finally won the case. I was. It's a kind of a long story, but I went through the territory. They needed somebody to fill in for Big John Studd over in Europe. I went in instead, had a hell of a match with this big, huge guy, a 450-pound guy. And the guy called Vince and told Vince, if you don't give this kid a job, you're out of your mind. And basically that was it. When I came home from the trip, went back and met with him and at the office, sat down, and they came up with the name Brutus Beefcake.
Yeah, so you mentioned wrestling a 450-pound guy in Europe. Did you have a preference of working? Did you like working with like the bigger guys, or did you like working with the smaller guys? Like say guys in the 250 range.
Absolutely. It was easier to work with somebody around my size. I was 260, and so working with somebody my size was always easier. But this guy, I was the only guy to pick this guy up and slam him ever.
Wow.
And everybody in WWE had already wrestled him. Big John Studd and a bunch of guys. Nobody could ever pick him up. The young kid, the 260-pound kid, picked the 450-pound guy up, boom, and slammed him.
That's awesome. Now, when you first the first WrestleMania you were at what was the first one?
It was WrestleMania 1.
WrestleMania 1. What was the experience like compared to, that was at the Garden, I think, Madison Square Garden. What was that experience like compared to like just doing a regular house show and regular tiddly territorial shows like you did up until then? Was that a game changer, or was that just any normal show? How did that feel?
It was a huge game changer, man. All the cards, all the chips were on the table for that one. Vince was investing everything in that show. We had Piper. There was just so much tremendous talent. Mr. T came in. We set up all the stuff. With the pay-per-view, the pressure was on. Madison Square Gardens is the place people dream about performing once in their lifetime. They have to do it regularly. I mean, it's unbelievable. But the guys were just so talented, so sharp, so good. They just, everybody knew their job. Everybody knew what to do. They laid out, what they wanted. The guys went out there and just did a tremendous job. And the people went crazy over it. WrestleMania 1 was a monster success. And then when they finally realized after the show and a day or two went by and things, and they got to watch it back and realize, oh my God, we're on something here. This is going to be our legacy here, this WrestleMania thing. Yeah,
because as we remember, Vince McMahon basically went, for lack of a better term, all in with the first WrestleMania. Now that night you worked with David Sammartino, and he was accompanied by his father Bruno. Could you tell us some of your memories about Bruno Sammartino? Did you get to work with him much? And I guess a lot of people consider Bruno like the living legend of, was considered the living legend of the sport. Tell us some of your memories about Bruno.
Bruno was a true gentleman and a true legend for sure. What a great individual. Him and his son didn't get along. It was kind of weird working with David. But Bruno and I worked together many, many times. He's from Pittsburgh, and I worked in Pittsburgh with Bruno. And I mean, I had utmost respect for Bruno, and Bruno, in a way, passed the torch to me in Pittsburgh, his hometown. Put me over right in the middle of the ring.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm telling you, but did it right. It wasn't like he went out there and tried to beat me up for 10 minutes and then slipped on a banana peel and won. We had a hell of a match, and then boom, and I won. And I mean, I had such respect for him. And after that, I was just completely just blown away. I was like, this guy, he didn't have to do nothing. He could have done anything he wanted. Nobody would have argued with it, especially not me. I went out there and we just had a hell of a match, and multiple times, and arenas all over the country. We had fun out there. He was just the consummate, professional.
It's outstanding.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I first started watching wrestling, probably was about 10 or so, 87, 88 in there. And that's when you first came out with the Barber gimmick, or when the Barber gimmick first came out. Now, I'm really intrigued with that part of your career. That's my favorite part of your wrestling career. Who first came up with the idea? Was that you? Who came to you with it? What was the storyline behind that? The origination of Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Obviously, you guys haven't read my book. You need to. But the Brutus Beefcake gimmick, basically Vince came up with the name. I came up with the outfits, the character, their persona. Pat Patterson, I don't know, you know who Pat Patterson is, right?
Oh yeah.
Big time, the main guy, Vince's main guy. He kind of wanted me to be the gay caballero, like guy, but I didn't really want to go that route. So I did my thing, and it was going tremendously well. And I don't know why anybody want to change it, but they Pat Patterson was doing what he always did, and they would like to throw curveballs at you and do stuff, and they cooked up this thing, a match where somebody was supposed to get their hair cut, and then Adrian Adonis cuts my hair, and then they had all this match for that WrestleMania 3 where Piper was going to cut Adrian's hair and all this stuff, and they didn't tell me anything. I mean, I knew I was going out there in Piper's match, whatever, and help him to win the match, and then when I went out there and brought Piper the clippers and stuff, Piper said, "No, you do the honors and shave him." And then we went on vacation for a couple of days, and we showed back up at TV, and they handed me a little white coat with a pair of scissors and a like a pocket protector with a comb, and handed it to me and said, "Okay, now you're the barber."
Yeah.
I said, "Beg your pardon?"
Yeah.
I'm the what? I'm the barber. What is the barber exactly? And they just laughed, And we did a little photo shoot in the barber shop. The first couple of pictures there, me with the scissors and the little white coat and my bow tie. And, still to this day, I look at the picture. I look at this one picture of my face, and really look at that picture, and you can tell I'm pissed. I am so mad that I want to scream bloody murder. Okay, 3 years wrestling all over the country, main events against Hogan and all the top guys. Brutus Beefcake is on fire. Now you're going to change my name, like change my whole gimmick, change everything? Who does that? Why would you even think of doing that? But that's what was happening.
Yeah. So was that part of the concern switching from kind of like heel to babyface, the changing of the roles? Because at that time, you had Terry number 1 on the top of the card, the top babyface. So was that kind of how did you feel about going over to the babyface side of the aisle, if you will?
Well, going face, that's what you want to do eventually, always. You need to, the guys that make the best babyface are the guys who have been heel for many years, and that's how you learn your trade, is being a heel.
Yeah.
And so I paid my dues on the road doing the heel thing, but they just didn't even ask me, here's going to, and Brutus, Brutus the Barber was, a babyface, but hardly a babyface. I was more brutal than the heels.
Yeah,
people. I just beat up everybody and cut everybody's hair. So
right, yeah.
Now on the WrestleMania 6 episode, I read that Lanny Poffo didn't know he was going to get his hair cut until you cut his hair. Is that true? Forgive me for this. Was in the book as well. I'm sorry.
That was WrestleMania. Yeah, he Patterson didn't tell him that when they sent him out there, and they're giving everybody the finish, and they didn't tell him that he's getting his hair cut as a rib. And that's a big part of my gimmick. Huge. That haircut on the thing on WrestleMania. And then he took off. I chased him down, physically had to drag him back to the ring. And he was kicking and screaming and fighting. And I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what was going on either. But
right.
I did what I had to do, and I got him back into the ring and cut his hair. And then when I went finally back to the dressing room, there was Randy standing there in the hallway, all bowed up, and what's going on? What'd you do that for? I go, Patterson didn't tell your brother the finish, that he was getting his hair cut. And he just stood there and looked at me, and then he stomped off and talking to himself, went off down the hallway. But it wasn't my fault. I'm just doing what I was told.
Yeah. So besides Poffo, how many was there like any other guys who kind of like took exception to getting their haircuts? I mean, you've worked probably like hundreds, if not thousands, of guys under the barber gimmick. So was there like anyone else that really like stood out that said like, "What the hell, man? Why am I getting my hair cut?"
There was quite a few people that didn't really like getting a haircut. Most of them all did get, they got clipped or trimmed or something. No, mostly nobody wanted to get a haircut. I mean, some of the TV guys that I work with at TV would get paid much better to wrestle with me on TV and get a haircut. So the guys who were smart, every 3 months would, they'd grow their hair out and put on a different set of trunks and call themselves a different name and then go out on TV and wrestle me and get paid 3 or 4 times what the other guys were getting to wrestle these enhancement matches.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Smart on their part.
And that was one of the first matches I remember you totally shaving the head besides the WrestleMania was the Outlaw Ron Bass. And I think that might have been your poster that I had on my wall because I had a Brutus poster. It was you holding the shears in one hand and then dropping the hair like this and then, with your maniacal Barber look. And that was on my wall for the longest. That was about the first match that I just was like, oh, this is awesome. This gimmick is crazy funny. This is so cool.
That was the first poster. I don't think that was Ron, but we had that match in the Sun Dome here in Tampa. It was a Saturday night's main event. On the NBC deal, back when we were doing those on Saturday nights, and it's like for some reason Saturday night's main event show, they loved me. I did more Saturday night main event shows than any other wrestler in the WWF.
That could explain it a lot because I used to watch. Back then. Now it's like I want the Saturday Night Live, but back then when I was little and you're really a little kid, when you're 12 years old, you want wrestling on all the time. You're like, when's Saturday night's main event going to come on again instead of SNL? That's awesome. I never knew that. That's a cool fact. Do you know that?
Yep. There you go. Little tidbit, little trivia.
Now,
you can spread to somebody.
Did you ever feel silly doing the sleeper hold at all? Like because some of the matches, I mean, the guy goes down like fast, and obviously in real life, unless you like pinch a nerve or something, nobody's going to go down that quick. Did you ever just like, okay, this is getting a little ridiculous? Like when you're touring, you ever any storylines like mid-match end? Any cool tales you could tell, like when the story like switched and something else happened, like something like that?
I didn't really think of anything. The sleeper. I love the sleeper hold. I mean, go ask Hogan if he liked dropping a leg and then has to have both knees and both hips replaced and his back, 47 back surgeries. You ask him, he says, I wish I was doing the sleeper hold and Brutus was dropping the leg. Because the wear and tear on my body was minimal. And the sleepers, I'm on my feet. I'm in a position to control things. It was the greatest thing ever, man. I had no problems with that. Big and strong enough to pretty much hang on to anybody. And really, if you know how to clamp down, that's why the sleeper holds, and there's such an outcry in the public and everything. Sleeper hold is very dangerous. A man with the power and strength that I have, get somebody and crank on their head, you can really hurt somebody bad, if not, put their lights out permanently if you're not careful. So I had to always be careful, take care of my opponents, and by the grace of God, and thank God that no one was ever hurt or injured, in any of my matches like that. And I took care of my opponents and everything. They didn't like their haircuts. There was a lot of guys in that chair in the back crying. But you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. So going back to WrestleMania 6, your match with Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, I believe you was the first guy to ever pin Perfect on WWF television. Is that correct?
That's true. I broke the perfect streak with the win in WrestleMania 6. Yep. It was 72,000 people.
Yeah.
Wild
So
day.
Yeah. So how was it wrestling in front of like the larger stadiums? Did that make you more nervous, or did that get you more like pumped and animated for the match?
Yeah, at that point in the game, brother, it was not. Nerves were not coming into the factor at all. I knew my craft. Getting in front of that many people and walking out there and just, 72,000 people screaming and standing on their chairs and going wild. I was having a blast. I was having a ball. I mean, it didn't get any easier than that. When you got to go out there and struggle and people are going boring in their match and shit like that, that's tough.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I'm just lucky, and I never had to deal with anything like that. I was taught well. I was mentored by a lot of older wrestlers coming up, and they, I learned ring psychology. I learned how to work the crowd. I learned how to get those people in the crowd on my side and manipulate them and bring them up and bring them down and bring them all around. And that's what it was all about, man. That's, could you get the crowd and could you hold the crowd? You tell them a little story out there and make them happy. You want them to leave that match going, man, that was great. Did you see what he did? Oh my God, I can't wait till next week so we can see him again. That's the art, of the craft of being a professional wrestler when you really got it down.
Now, another match of mine that was really, I don't know, it's just a random match. Was that No Holds Barred pay-per-view you did with, it was you and Hulkster versus Macho Man, or Macho King Savage, and then Tiny Lister, the Zeus guy. Yeah. Now, do you have any fond memories of that match? How was it working with Zeus and bringing him into the business? Was he totally, I've seen some of his cameos, he's real religious now. Do you still talk with Tiny Lister? How was working with him, bringing somebody totally new into the business, I'm assuming, and they just put him into a role for one match basically, and that was it?
Well, Tiny had done that No Holds Barred movie with Vince had actually produced it a few years before that. So he and there was tons of wrestlers in that movie. It was shot mostly in Atlanta. Tons of guys in the movie, and Tiny was not Tiny. I had known Tiny. I was there while they were doing the shooting, and he was a great guy. He was, he was a monster. I mean, this guy's. They put him in like a 4 or 5 inch heel. He was already 6'7" or something. I mean, he was 7 foot tall. He weighed 310, 320. I mean, you'd be looking at him like, just, he was a skyscraper, big guy. And we had to take the guy into the ring. Okay, he was an actor, but it's a whole different ballgame taking a guy that big into the ring to do a pay-per-view, to do a live TV shoot. There's no big delay there or anything. There's no doing over stuff, So Tiny came in a day before, and we walked him through. We spent several hours in the ring with him in Tampa, walking him through the match. We laid it out very, very simply, things that we knew that he could easily do. And but he was still nervous as hell. And we kept doing stuff like to try to calm him down. And one thing we would always say that would make him laugh and stuff was free James Brown. And we'd say that to him. And he would smile and relax, I mean, he did an incredible job the first match. And then we didn't know that they were going to bring that back in the cage. And then we brought it back in the cage, and that steel cage with those bars. I mean, yeah, it's easy to climb on, but man, you can't. The old cages, the Hurricane Fence, you can run and jump into it and bounce off and all that. Not that cage, brother. It was like right. It was all steel. It didn't give. If you ran over and hit your head, you were sliced open to your butt, to the bone. bleeding. You had to be so careful.
Yeah, the old school blue bar cage, as opposed to some of the cages they use now.
One and only time I ever was in a cage like that, and because I hated it. Made it easy to climb up on and work the climbing up and down on the cage thing, and the guy come over and grab you and throw you off, and then you go scampering up the cage. But it was almost too easy to climb, so you could have been over the fence, over the cage in a heartbeat. That thing was so easy to climb. So you really had to slow it down when you got to the climbing over the cage, or you'd have been out 10 times over during the match. So
right,
Tiny did an incredible job, pulled off the impossible, and never didn't screw up even one time. Made everything look great, and I mean, just the reviews and everything, people loved it. And it was a mitzvah, brother. We pulled off the impossible, not once, but twice. Getting Tiny in there and doing tremendous match.
And then it was actually a third time too, because even though you weren't in that match with him, he also worked. I believe it was a Survivor Series match when he was teaming with DiBiase against I think it was like Hogan and Jake the Snake. So
I missed that match. I missed that one, brother. I don't know. I don't remember that. But
that's why I bring in the wrestling talent. He knows he's an encyclopedia. I swear, this guy. Now, so you're on top of the world at this point, in my opinion. I mean, '89 Brutus Beefcake going into '90 was one of the best gimmicks going out there. I mean, you were heading up. And then, you had something bad happen. Oh, I'm not really going to dwell on that too much. But I am curious about a lot of the pain that went into a lot of the staples and stuff. Describe some of that pain. I mean, is that by far going to be the most pain you're ever going to experience in your life, would you say? I mean, that was a lot of surgeries.
Well, it was actually one long surgery that lasted like 16, 17 hours.
Jesus.
They cut me from behind each ear all the way across my head, peeled my face completely off, had to reconstruct my face using 8 strips of titanium, 32 screws, and bone grafts, and put all that stuff back together. My eyes were sewn shut. They closed it with 138 steel staples. I wasn't supposed to live. Never supposed to wrestle again. Never, they didn't want me to ever drive a car the rest of my life. They just didn't think I was going to make it through the surgery, but God loves me, and yeah, man, I made it through
the surgery.
Yep. Did the impossible, and I mean, the pain. My head's still numb from most of that, from that surgery across, the staples. I tore my head open one time and getting into the shower, I hit a steel, one of those ones that has like a door, and I walked in and I tore open the gash on the top of my head.
Oh, I hate those.
That long, and I went back to the doctor, and he's looking at me, and said, "Man, you look great, everything." And I was like, "All right, thanks, doc. Thanks for that good checkup." Oh yeah, by the way, do you think you can help me out here? And I bent over and showed him my head, and he just looks at me and goes, "Oh." Gets out his staple gun right in his office. No shot, no nothing. Just goes ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. 12 staples.
Jesus.
To close where I ripped the incision open, and because it was still fresh. And said, "All right, thanks, Doc." Jumped in the car, went back to the beach, and started jet skiing again. I mean, it's like, I'm just so fortunate, and so lucky. All the years and years and years of training, hours and hours devoted to the gym. Instead of going to the bar, instead of going in there, there. I spent countless hours in the gym training and the physically, taking care of my body, and eventually it's what took care of me, man. It's what made it possible for me to make a comeback when they said it was impossible.
So how long after the surgery did you get the mindset, like, you know what, I'm going to make a return to the ring? Was it like immediate, or was there like a period of time that you was like, you know what, I'm done, I'm hanging up the tights. I'm putting the shears away. Could you tell us a little bit about that timetable?
Shoot, I didn't make up my mind about that kind of stuff. I mean, I definitely was at the top of my game when all this happened, and basically took my career. That's it. They said, you're done. That's over. As far as coming back, it was a good year or year and a half before it really had. I think I even had a couple of matches. They put me in some disguises and let me run in, let me do some stuff, so I could get the feel of what it was like being back in the ring. And kicks and punches flying at your face and everything. I mean, the doctor said, don't mess this up because you can't do it like that again. If anything happens, you're screwed. You're gonna look like Frankenstein's monster, because they're gonna just have to cut and then put it all back, and you're gonna just have giant scars. I have no scarring because it's all up here in my scalp.
Yeah,
the scar, and so that,
yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing too with professional wrestling is you can be as prepared as possible, but accidents in the ring still do happen. So just the fact that you still made the comeback and still returned to the ring, probably like off and on for almost another decade after the accident, is truly amazing. Now, during your time away before you made the return, you hosted the Barber Shop little talk show segment on, I think it was like Superstars and Wrestling Challenge. Where did that concept initially come from?
Well, they since I was training, I was in shape, but I didn't feel confident, 100% confident yet, and as far as taking that chance of going into the ring and maybe not coming out alive. And so they wanted to utilize my skills, and I had great mic skills, so they came up with the idea to do this barbershop thing, built the set and everything. Who would have figured it would have turned out to be one of the best interview shows that they ever did?
I would say that's the best. I mean, out of the Brother Love show, and that one, and a couple other ones. I mean, it's easily. I would say now. This is always fascinating me. Do you personally take credit for launching Shawn Michaels' career into the stratosphere with that super kick around the world? And also, did they know the glass was going to break like that? Any ridiculousness stories on that glass? Because that glass looked like it shattered in a crazy way.
I think it was even sugar glass, but it didn't break right. And Marty was cut. I think we did it a couple times too.
Oh wow!
But I had no idea. I had no idea that Marty was gonna go down the shit pipe pretty much after that, and Shawn was gonna be lifted up, the Heartbreak Kid, and go on to do the kind of things he did. I had no clue that was ever going to happen. So I mean, I guess for him that was a real moment in time that totally changed his direction and launched his career.
I still remember that segment gave the 10-year-old kid in me nightmares, seeing him fly through that window like that.
It was.
You mentioned during your Hall of Fame, has Shawn paid you back for that window yet?
Nope.
We have to get on him about that.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Marty Jannetty, that's a whole nother different story. And you guys, we see you guys like in the ring, and then we also know you guys live your lives outside of the ring. Could you tell us like what some of the outside of the ring life was like? Because especially like in the 80s, you guys were going multiple towns a week. Could you tell us like some of your places to visit, I guess?
Brother, we were going multiple towns a day back in the 80s. In 85, 86, 87, 88, I wrestled 500 matches a year.
Jesus. It's like 1.5
Our television tapings every 2 weeks, our matinee shows on Saturdays and Sundays. We were selling out 20,000 seat arenas on Saturday and 20,000 seat arenas on Sunday. They were making so much money. It was ridiculous. And they ran us so hard. I mean, only because the guys are just invincible that most of it, we didn't lose too many guys back in those days, but it's amazing.
Right.
But it just, the guys were just so good, and the talent was just so good. Everybody, and the guys stuck together. They looked out for each other. They helped each other out. It's a different day now. It's not the same.
Now, your last match or last major taping, I've noticed on Wikipedia, was WrestleMania 9. Now, did you know going in that you were pretty much going to be done with WWF back then at that time, or what was the mindset going into that time, that era? That was it 94-ish?
93.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really think I was going to be done with them forever or anything, but there was we had some stuff going. I was working on a television series to shoot in Florida called Thunder in Paradise. We actually filmed a movie called Thunder in Paradise with me and Jimmy Hart, and a bunch of people are in that. And then I worked on the series, 22 episodes. I did all Hulk stunts and doubling, riding motorcycles, driving boats and cars, and, all kind of diving. And I'm a master diver. And that's another thing. They said, you Beefcake, forget it. You're never going to be able to go diving again, because my whole head and all that stuff. And proved them wrong on that one too.
Yeah. So what are some of the major differences between acting on a television series and then getting into the ring and wrestling?
Well, it's a big difference, man. Acting is, sometimes accidents do happen, but it's a real controlled environment. They really have everything laid out, mapped out, every step, every move. I did a lot of helped with a lot of choreographing of fight sequences over those years. I did 10 movies and the TV series and stuff. So I spent a lot of time with stunt coordinators and stuff, and they always came right to me and Hogan or everything to for input on these fights, because we like the old classic. My favorite is the old classic Western. And you watch all the new. If you watch the new Westerns or any of the Rock's movies, you'll see more suplexes, more body slams, more wrestling moves, and even in the old barroom brawls. It was kind of the headlock thing and run the guy into the wall, and the body slam off the bar onto the table and everything. And so, I really enjoyed doing that stuff and working that stuff. But I really enjoyed being the stunt man. You, as a wrestler, you are the stunt man. You're doing the stunts live, and there's no do-overs. In the movie, you can stop and reset and do it again, and then in the ring you have to do it right.
Right. Yeah.
The first time. So for me, acting was easy. I knew how to do it and what to do, and if you got a chance to do it a second time, but really hardly ever had to do anything over again, because I was so accustomed and used to being precise and being exact. The timing, everything's got to be right, and that was a no-brainer for me. That was easy. That was the easiest thing.
Now, after you left WWE, you did a bunch of random stuff in WCW. I'm not going to get into WCW times because, that was a weird time in wrestling for a lot of people. But let me ask you this, though. What would be some things that you could tell us about WCW that were just either different or chaotic about that time, the late 90s in there?
Well, the WWF was very kind of strict and stringent, and everything was by the book, and WCW was a lot different, where a lot more relaxed atmospheres and not so much by the book things, and the guys, it was way more relaxed kind of atmosphere in the dressing rooms and in the shows and stuff, and so it was definitely a lot different than I was used to, being all those years in WWF. Which really made it easy. It's just like there was never, didn't seem like there was ever any pressure and everything. I knew my job. I just go in there and do your job and go home, pick up your money.
Right. So who came up with the idea for you to feud with Hulkster in late '94 in main eventing Starrcade? Was that Hogan? Was that a Hogan idea or a Bischoff idea, or who came up with the idea?
Bischoff was around. I'm not sure Bischoff was really around then. Well, we were doing Thunder in Paradise at Disney World, Walt Disney World, Orlando. The WCW was filming, I think, their stuff over at Universal and stuff. So the people were all the time. Everybody. We had Terry Funk, we had Sting, and Neidhart, Hercules, and George Steele, all kind of people on the sets of shoots and for episodes and stuff that we did over there. So there's a lot of guys around, and the WCW people were always there. And so they said, hey, you guys, what if we did this? What if we put Brutus under this, have him come out under the hood, and then, boom, and do this jump you, Hogan, and they pull the mask off, everybody sees it's Brutus. So, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get a paycheck, and it's easy work. Why not?
Yeah.
It's Starrcades and this and that. I've been to so many pay-per-views. I'm so fortunate, so lucky, just that just being able to do. And the funniest thing is, there's people go their whole life hoping to get a main event on a pay-per-view. I did it as 4 or 5 different characters. I did it as Bruce Beefcake. I did it as the Zodiac. I did it as the Disciple. I did it as the Booty Man. I did it as the Butcher. On and on. So, to be able to, how lucky can you be to be able to step into to do a different character? It's like not unlike an actor. They say, all right, here, hand you a script. All right, Brutus, here today, you're the Butcher. And out there, and you're going to wrestle Hogan in a main event and for Starrcade, and boom. So that's what I did, and then WWF owned the name Brutus Beefcake.
Right.
They trademarked illegally, actually, but they still trademarked it. So for a while they held on to it. I couldn't use it. And eventually now I have the trademark, and I own my own name. And there's no disputing that now. So
right.
We were joking before you got on if you were going to talk about the Zodiac. That's so funny that you even brought that. I totally forgot about that until these guys were talking about it. That's
the Zodiac was so much fun. We brought Paul Wright in the big show.
Yeah.
Hogan found him in Chicago or something playing basketball. The guy's a monster. And we took him in the ring down here in Florida. And first thing, I was in the ring with him about 255, 260-ish. He was 500 pounds, 7 foot tall. Hogan goes, all right, Brutus, slam him. How nimble, staying for Paul, he was able to work with me, go up, and I picked him up, boom, and turned him and slammed him. Perfect, just boom.
Yeah, Paul Wright definitely a future Hall of Famer in the wrestling business too. So you've worked with and against practically, I would say, almost like everybody in the late 90s, 80s, and 90s. Who was your favorite opponent out of like everybody you've faced in your career? Could you possibly narrow it down and say, you know, this guy is my favorite opponent?
Well, I had so many great matches and opponents. One of my favorites to wrestle was Curt Hennig.
Yeah, there we go.
And because Curt, I actually had Curt's first match with him out in the Northwest Territories in Oregon.
Wow.
And I was in my first 3 or 4 years of the business, I was, learning. And so his dad brought him out there. Stan the Man Stasiak was out there on Don Owens territory. It's where Piper was from. And his place lived right out there. And but Curt and I had a real chemistry. It was just incredible. And we never had to talk. We never had to work out a spot or anything like that. Everything just came natural. It just flowed with me and him. And it just was fun. I mean, I can't describe it any other way. Going out there in the ring with him and wrestling for 20 minutes and the crowd just going out of their minds crazy. It was just fun. As fun as you could ever imagine it could be. And that's what it's all about. If you can have fun doing what you love, then, that's amazing, the thing to do.
Yeah.
That's what we all.
Yeah, that's like the real American dream.
What was Curt Hennig like in person? Because he was one of my favorite wrestlers, and his passing was so tragic. And actually, it was right down there in Tampa back in 2003. So, what was he like in person? Because he was one of my favorite superstars back then.
Curt was a real dynamic personality. If he didn't like you, God, you never know what to expect from him. He was the man. He loved to rib the guys, certain guys too. There was certain guys that were just more susceptible to ribs. And Curt just loved to ride certain guys and do stuff. And I was lucky. Curt and I were great friends and had been since the beginning, since he broke into business. And so I never had any problems or anything with it. I watched him torture and do stuff to people that I can't even imagine anybody ever did that to me. What would happen?
That's awesome. Yeah. Now with the Hall of Fame, was it 2019?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. Who first came to you with the Hall of Fame idea, and was there anybody you saw at the ceremony you hadn't seen in a while? How was that whole experience?
Well, yeah, that was the WWF had come to me a couple of years ago. Huh? WWE had come to me a few years ago, and I hadn't heard from him in 25 years. And one of the lawyers actually called me and said, "Look, we're looking for guys, live bodies actually, because we want to do the new games and action figures and stuff like that. But we want we want guys who are still alive, because so many of my friends, so many guys have passed on. It's terrible. I mean, Kamala, God rest his soul. I don't know if you guys knew, but Kamala
just found out
yesterday or the day before. He was a good friend for many, many, many years. And
very underrated performer too. I felt. I mean, just even though his gimmick, I think, really hindered him. But if you really sit down and watch some of his matches, like the ability he had was amazing.
Well, he was tremendously athletic, and that was a big, strong man. Believe me, I wrestled him a bunch of times, and I was always very excited and happy. He would touch me in the ring like I could really feel him. And you think, a guy that big, how can a guy be able to be in the ring and you hardly even feel him? And he's so big and he's so strong, but that's how good he was as a professional. He was great. He was tremendous, and God love him. And I know he's been sick for a while, and his diabetes was bad. I think he lost both his legs below the knee.
Oh, I didn't
So
know that.
Yeah, both of them. Yep.
yeah, no, he's big Jim. He's now I know he's sitting up there on the right hand with a big man and watching us and laughing, having a cold one.
Well, how do you feel about the wrestling business today? Do you watch wrestling at all? I mean, what's a typical day like for you? I mean, what's going on in your life now these days with the quarantine?
I watch a little bit of it. I'm a big sci-fi and stuff guy, and the action movies and everything. I mean, in the wrestling, I mean, the guys are tremendous athletes now, and the stuff they do. I mean, it's a completely different ball game than my era. It's a whole new breed of guys, and what they do in the ring, I can't even imagine. I can't even begin to think. All that stuff with the ladder matches and all. I mean, the stuff they do is crazy. It's different. It's a different time. The business changes over the years. That's one of the changes.
Okay. Well, you have more questions?
We're gonna wrap things up here in a minute. So, I guess, what do you want your legacy as Brutus and Barber Beefcake? Like, how do you want fans to remember you?
Well, just remember me strutting and cutting. I mean, that's in a nutshell, man. We out there cutting the guy's hair, throwing it into the air, standing in the middle of the ring with the big clippers, and 93,000 people screaming their heads off you. So the building rumbling, the shaking you can't even imagine what the dome, the silver dome, sounded like. It was over 100,000 people in there, 100,000 people screaming bloody murder, and it's just like it's undescribable.
I remember the Silver Dome. I saw Metallica there back in 2000. That place is immense. That's crazy immense. Then they tore it down, poor thing. I know. Do you ever miss it? Do you ever just miss just getting up in the morning, or at this point your body's just like, I'm done, I'm retired, I can chill with my chihuahua and the wife and just hang out all day? What's the deal there?
I don't miss. I mean, I had over 40 years of wrestling, and I've had my fill. I traveled the world for 40 years, and so now I enjoy. I mean, all that traveling is away from home, away from family, parents, people that I love dying and things happening, and I missed out on a lot of stuff to be able to have that career. So I mean, it's bittersweet. The good things and the bad things. And being away is one of the hardest things. But now I love living here in Florida, and Missy and I go down to the beach. We got the Chihuahuas. We got a pool in the backyard. We got a killer big jacked up golf cart and a Jeep, and we have a ball every day. I live, if tomorrow is my last day, it was a fun day. I had a great time, and I'm glad to have been here and lived it. My wife is just amazing. She's the most amazing cook. The hardest thing I have to do is push away from the table. She makes the best food. And when you eat out on the road, you're on the road for 40 years eating out. And then you come home to be able to have those home cooked meals. That's what I'm talking
even better.
When I got married, I bloomed out the first thing. I didn't know exactly what you're talking about. That's awesome. Well, I'd like to thank Brutus Beefcake for joining us today. Listen to us. The show will be on Friday night. And thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, you guys go to BrutusBeefcake.com and get those Brutus Beefcake books, brother. You want to read a good book? It's probably the best wrestling book. I'm not toot my own horn here, toot, but it really is one of the best wrestling books, bar none.
That's awesome. I'll have to check it out.
Sorry, you will really enjoy it. It tells a lot of the whole story about the accident and all this stuff.
Outstanding. Well, say hi to your wife and the dogs, and appreciate your time, Mr. Beefcake.
There's my little Chihuahua, Sugar Pie, right there on my
Sugar
shoulder.
Pie. Do you got a cat in there too? My daughter loves cats. You got a cat in there? I saw a cat.
Oh, no, we got two Chihuahuas.
Good
Oh,
cats.
just 2 2 hours. Awesome. Good deal. All right. Well, thanks for your time, sir. We'll talk to you later. Okay. I appreciate it.